What's going on, Silicon Sports Spectator? This week's episode comes to you during what I think is the dullest sports week of the entire year. Don't you worry, we still have a ton of great stories about the fan experience in the Bay Area. Your professional sports do not go to sleep, though. All-stars, some old faces from the past show up in the headlines this week. All this and more right here in Silicon Sports Spectator, your favorite sports talk show for all things Bay Area sports. Hit it! All right, Speckies, thanks for tuning in. So like I was saying, I actually think this week in professional sports, as far as watching things on TV especially, it's one of the dullest weeks ever. I mean, yes, we did have the baseball all-star game, whether or not you like that. I'm not a huge fan of it, though I was entertained by home run derby and all. What do they call it? The hit off or shoot off, whatever, at the end of a tie. You know, that was all new to me, but nevertheless tuned in just to that and found it exciting for an otherwise unremarkable game. It's cool to see some of our Giants pitchers make appearances in that. And it was nice. One of the guys that I rooted for last year when he was in Oakland, Brent Rooker, had a great day and great appearance there. I thought he represented the club well. And then it was cool because shortly after that, I was hearing rumors that the Giants were maybe interested in pursuing Rooker in a trade here, which I think would be wonderful. Young bat like that, good contract, all things. So I don't know what we would have to offer necessarily, but we know that the A's are never one to keep their young stars around. So if the Giants can move on that, all the better. We had the baseball all-star game, but then a lot of the other sports kind of go silent and, maybe it's their own summer breaks or whatever. We got lots of news happening. Nevertheless, maybe some sports that we usually don't cover too much. Maybe we'll dive a little bit into some business topics that are always of interest, some cool transactions to report on, and even some nostalgic points. So following my format, we lead off with NASCAR. I know, in the Bay Area. Hopefully you were just as hyped about this race as I was. Had that great conversation in our bonus interview last week with James from Boxcar Visual. Hope you checked out that episode. If you haven't, do go back and listen to it. It's a great one for if you ever thought about sport of racing, or just even if you haven't. It's a great conversation for an entry-level talk. So it's great to see our podcast growing and getting an even bigger audience. But yeah, NASCAR, I didn't watch the entire race, but it was cool to have it on in the background. NASCAR has come a long way just in terms of how the sport evolved. Like, this was a multiple phase course and all this talk about the points and everything. That's something that I'd probably have to go and take a master class on, figure out a little bit more about what they're doing. But it's nice. Instead of simply, hey, which car is going to go the fastest, like this was this cool multi-stage event. And it looked like it was a beautiful day up in Sonoma, a beautiful weekend, and ended up crowning Shane Van Gisbergen was the winner of that race, the Sonoma Smart 350. One other event that I definitely tuned into more and stuck on was the Let me try that again. But another event that I checked out was the American Century Golf Tournament. This is hosted in Lake Tahoe every year. Just a celebrity golf tournament, but it is covered nationally. What's great about this one is that it's a tournament where a lot of familiar Bay Area faces show up, whether it's their off season or if they're in retirement. They show up and they play in this tournament. And so it's cool. The likes of Steph Curry and Jerry Rice, George Kittle was in it for his first year this year. Lots of familiar faces, a lot of cool celebrities doing it. And how cool was it that at the end of this tournament, the winner was Joe Pavelski, our former San Jose Sharks captain. He has been in contention the last couple of years, and this was the first year that he has won it. Congratulations, Captain America. He had a walk-off eagle putt to end the tournament, so what better way to go off. He was also celebrating his anniversary with his wife that weekend, so I think just things are all working really well for Joe Pavelski. Great to have him back here in California. And I hope he's enjoying his retirement. I don't think he had any bogeys at all, at least certainly not on Sunday. So an impressive golfer all around. He's been in contention before and ended up sealing it off the win. Steph Curry, just so you know, was up towards the leaderboard. I think he finished top 5 or so, put on another strong performance. He always has a great following when he goes to these events. He was there with his father and his brother. Even heard rumors, by the way, of Seth Curry being a target for the Warriors in free agency. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But it's just a great event. It reminded me a lot of the Pebble Beach tournament, the AT&T that happens every February. Big Pro-Am tour and everything. I've gone to the AT&T several years now. I've never been to the American Century in Tahoe. But in watching it on TV, it really reminded me of what the AT&T used to be. In more recent years, the AT&T still technically has its Pro-Am and so forth, but it really seems to have diminished. I know they've cut the number of amateurs playing in that by over half, and it's still great to see the setting absolutely takes the cake there in Pebble Beach. I talked about this in one of my very first episodes when we first started recording in February. What the PGA seems to be doing is moving away from the amateur stuff and focusing on this prime setting, one of their top golf courses on the tour, and legitimizing that as just a pure pro event. So we'll see if tradition bucks that and the AT&T continues as a pro-am, or will it just kind of be diminished over the years. We do have this American-centric golf, which seems to be much more popular, has its own. And that's just a pure amateur one. The pros don't even play in it. But nevertheless, from an entertainment value, going up to Tahoe, just a few hours away from the Bay Area. It's hardly a Bay Area story, or I include it here because of so many Bay Area professional athletes. Check it out, but also certainly that Bay Area sports fans. That's an easy trip for us to make, especially during a summer holiday weekend. And while baseball right now is on its all-star break, we did, of course, get to see the game itself. We got to see Home Run Derby, all that. Some good news, though, that was, and this is not confirmed yet, but the San Francisco Chronicle wrote a good article about how Oracle Park could be set to host the All-Star Game in 2028. So just in a couple years out, they're thinking because of the Olympic year, the big presence down in Los Angeles that year, that would be just an easy jaunt up to Northern California to showcase one of its most beautiful ballparks in all of the league at Oracle Park. So that's not official yet, but they do seem to be the front runner in pitching this idea. But it seems as though the city is making a big push to have that All-Star game in just a few years. Speaking of All-Stars, other news, WNBA goes into its All-Star break right now. The game itself is on Saturday the 19th. So coming up, Kayla Thornton, of course, representing our Golden State Valkyries. And, just to rehash her story a little bit, because I think it's a really cool one. Kayla Thornton was an undrafted player in the WNBA. At different times, I think I read that she was cut by 2 different teams early in her career, finds a roster spot on the New York Liberty, and becomes an important person off the bench, like the 6th woman of the year. And then, of course, now on a new franchise with our Valkyries, she really has emerged as a star, known for her play on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. She's become this leader that we can really rally around. So happy to have that important piece. Happy to see her representing the Bay Area. And one more All-Star to mention is that Christian Espinoza was added to the MLS All-Star roster. I was really glad to see this because in the first go of the roster being announced that there was no one from the San Jose Earthquakes being added to the MLS All-Star game, but Christian Espinoza, a well-deserved addition to that team. The way that they're doing it this year is that MLS All-Stars will be facing off against the Liga MX All-Stars. So all the All-Stars from the Mexican Liga MX will be playing the MLS All-Stars. That's also coming up soon on July 24th. Next up, just in our good news section here, we had the San Jose Sharks schedule drop for the entire year. So pretty cool. They kick off on October 7th at home against the hated Golden Knights from Las Vegas. So the Sharks, a year of hope, we're hoping to see where we begin to make some strides and that our young core begins to continue to advance. We've had a lot of good movement in the offseason, a lot of good free agent signings. Anxious to see how the new team comes together. Thankfully, we don't have a lot of bad news this week, but I did want to cover a couple of topics. First, going into the All-Star break, the Giants are kind of stumbling in. They lost 2 or 3 to the Dodgers over the weekend, which is never a fun thing. I was hoping to close that gap a little bit. Devers, who really, our star free agent signing, has been really frustrating to watch because his batting average has dipped but found out, and it was finally disclosed, that he has a disc injury. They're worried that he might even end up on the injured list. Hopefully that isn't the case, and really that this All-Star break is a good recovery time. So we're anxious to see how that all pans out, especially for this second half of the season. And like I alluded to at the beginning, maybe the Giants still have another big move in them. I expect that the Giants would probably make at least one more move focusing on offense just to really help close that gap a little bit. Elsewhere, the Valkyries are also in a little bit of a slump. Going into their All-Star break, they're on a 3-game losing streak. It's kind of a rough week for them. And these 3 losses that they had, this was against the Aces, against the Mercury, and against the Storm. Each one of these really was a winnable game, and really in heartbreak fashion. Against the Aces, this was the highest scoring game of the year for the Valkyries. Ended up in regulation, losing 104-102 in that one. Valkyries made a great, valiant comeback in that one, but ended up not able to close that one out. Same thing with the Phoenix Mercury, where had our chances to go ahead, and the Mercury were just that much better. So 2 very solid teams there. The Seattle Storm that we played just the other day, they ended up winning by 9, but it was a closer game than that. We had chances where we got real close, and I just couldn't quite get over that hump. After the All-Star break, we start action back up against the Dallas Wings. We're starting to find their groove a little bit. For a while, they were the worst team in the WNBA, but they're really starting to pick things up, including Dallas knocking off leading Minnesota the other week or so. So Dallas making some noise. We'll see if the Valkyries can avenge their earlier loss to Dallas. And lastly, I put this in my bad news category, but maybe it's really a no news thing. And that's the Warriors still eerily silent. They're the only NBA team right now that has not had any free agent signings this summer. Now, they've only had departures. Is this something to be worrying about? I don't know yet. There's Warriors certainly have been linked to different rumors, calling about different folks. The prevailing rumor is that looking at Al Horford from the power forward out of Boston. I don't know. I'm not as thrilled with that. It kind of depends on what kind of contract and deal that we can get him on. I wouldn't want to trade any assets, but if it's just a free agent signing, I don't know. I don't know if it puts us over the hump necessarily, but an aging Al Horford would be an interesting sign. Certainly, I think he fits the Golden State system, but just kind of worry, if he's lost a step, especially defensively, wouldn't be my first choice, but I'm not terribly upset by it. Another one was Anthony Melton, who the Warriors used to have on the and actually proved to be an excellent fit until he had a season-ending injury a couple seasons ago with the Warriors. So again, anxious to see how. I'm not sure how he would. I'm not so sure if we'll be as lucky the second time around if he does indeed sign with us. But we know that could be a great fit as well. But I think it's no secret that really what's holding up a lot of Golden State's efforts right now is what to do with Jonathan Kuminga. We've talked about this week after week, I feel as though, and for good reason. I think it's very clear that the Golden State is looking hard to move on from him, but haven't been able to find the right price today. Just today, in fact, the Phoenix Suns, who have been very active moving assets around, just trading away Bradley Beal to the LA Clippers and so forth, they emerged as a possible suitor for Jonathan Kuminga. I don't know what we would get in return there, so that'd probably have to be a multi-team trade as well, but there just does not seem to be a strong market for him. We'll monitor it all, though, right here. Elsewhere, just some other business items to rattle off on. I mentioned earlier about the MLB draft. The Giants had the 13th overall pick. They selected with that pick Gavin Killen, is a second baseman from the University of Tennessee. And as we looked at a lot of what the Giants were picking up, a lot of offense in there, maybe that's rightfully so. You can never tell what is going to happen with the baseball draft because a lot of times they're drafting high school players that really have no intention of going into a farm system, or certainly not making into the bigs right away, and they may become draft eligible again in the future until they play collegiately. I did want to give one shout out though, because way in the 20th round, not that I watched this, but it was a great news item nonetheless. Just a local shout out. I wanted to congratulate Elijah McNeil, drafted in the 20th round by the Giants, but he's a shortstop right here from Dublin High. An East Bay kid. He's committed to UC Davis. So I just wanted to give him a shout out. Elijah McNeil, shortstop, Dublin. Other transactions to note this week. Stephanie Talbot was cut from the Valkyries. This was another move that continues to surprise us, but the Valkyries have proven, that they're very, very fluid. And not long after that, just today, in fact, we activated center Ileana Rupert, who played with us earlier at the beginning of the season and is now rejoining the team after the international break. Fortunately, that comes losing Stephanie Talbot, who was well-liked and had some good performances. But with these WNBA rosters, there's always seems to be a lot of movement there. The Sharks remained active again. A couple trades to note here is that traded for Ryan Reeves. If you recognize that name, He's a big enforcer type. He had a hated rivalry with him during those playoff seasons where we played against the Las Vegas Golden Knights. He was on those teams, and there were some great moments where he and then Sharks player Evander Kane had a lot of going back and forth, talking to each other both on the ice and in social media. Made for a great rivalry and so forth. Ryan Reaves, though, if you look at his stats, though, let's not expect a lot. I think it's very clear that we are bringing him on as a fourth line, a contributor, really out there just to kind of that old enforcer role of, hey, protect the young kids. So that'll be nice to see, just add some toughness to our roster. I wouldn't expect big things in terms of performance. The other signing that I liked, though, was signing free agent Jeff Skinner. Jeff Skinner most recently on the Edmonton Oilers, but played most of his career in the Buffalo Sabres organization. For a long time, Jeff Skinner, when he was first drafted and won Rookie of the Year as an 18-year-old kid in the Buffalo Sabres organization, there was this big buzz about him, thinking that he was one of these future bright pieces of the NHL. It didn't quite pan out. He's had a very good career, Jeff Skinner, but more recently, especially being on a good contender like the Edmonton Oilers, he hardly got on the ice during the playoffs, which was unfortunate. Had a good season, all in all. Again, still someone that can score 20 goals for you. So I think we're taking a chance on him just to see if we can maybe refine that. The interview, where he responded after the signing, he's anxious to find a new role for himself, reestablish himself as a leader, and he seems to be very excited to join our young team. One more cool news item out of the Sharks camp, and that was Joe Thornton officially hired as a player development coach and a manager of hockey operations. So now Joe's been hanging around the ice for a long time in a very unofficial capacity. He's been a great presence there, even playing team dad to some of our young guys. I think Will Smith lived with him this past year, but now officially brought on as a coach. Most recently saw Joe as one of the coaches along with Patrick Marleau at coaching the development camp roster at the prospect scrimmage the other day. It was cool to see him on the bench, but now it's a very much an official capacity. He's been hanging around the ice, and if you recall, Mike Ricci, another former Sharks captain, runs that hockey operations and everything. So I don't know if that means we're going to see Joe behind the bench in every game, but certainly helping out our youth and everything. He'll be a big presence, or continue to be a big presence around the ice, helping our team develop. I love this signing. I love this fit, of course, for everything that Joe Thornton is to the sport and especially to our local team. Switching gears, and I'll put this into the beginning of my nostalgia here as we begin to look back. And all too, and this is also from the Sharks organization, is that Wayne Thomas, a longtime executive with the Sharks organization, passed away. I don't know if that's a name that's known well in Bay Area circles. It's a name that I have certainly heard over the years, but I didn't know much about him. Wayne Thomas was a former NHL player, a goaltender, had a great career as a player, but then really began to shine as a coach and as an executive, most of which was done with the San Jose Sharks organization. Now think way back to the 1993 season. Wayne Thomas is added as one of the assistant coaches on Kevin Constantine's roster. This is 1993 was the big year in Sharks history, where this is the year that we moved into the San Jose Arena, what eventually is now SAP Pavilion. But that was also the magical year where we make the playoffs unexpectedly, and Wayne Thomas was one of the assistant coaches on that. Wayne then began to shift away from to specialize as a goaltender coach, focusing on that. And you could think of the many names that really he helped develop over the year. Of course, we can remember Arturs Urbe in that 93 season, that magical playoff season. But then later, Yevgeny Nabokov, Vesa Toskala, who else? Mika Kiprusoff, even Ed Belfour, and all those years, the Sharks have had pretty consistent great goaltending, and I think a lot of people point to Wayne Thomas's influence as a factor in that. The Sharks were kind of revolutionary in starting this goaltending specialist coach, where not every organization had that, or maybe it was a much lesser focus. And the Sharks really helped build up that position. And then Wayne Thomas eventually moved into the front office, most recently as an assistant GM. So he is, for over 20 years now, been a part of the Sharks organization, and an important part, especially in those years when we were consistent contenders. and now as we moved into a rebuild phase, was still active and involved with that. So Wayne Thomas, rest in peace, and thank you for your contributions to Sharks hockey. Here's another name from back in the past you'll like, but did want to give a shout out to my high school alum, fellow high school alum from Archbishop Mitty, Carrie Walsh Jennings, was just elected into the USA Olympics Hall of Fame. No surprise there. You can think of all her many gold medals over an Olympic career that spanned, I think it was 5 appearances, most of which we remember her for her beach volleyball, especially when that sport was just taking off. She really was the face of the sport. But also she did, her first trip to the Olympics was for, I'll say, regular or court volleyball, indoor volleyball. And I think that was a gold medal win as well. I'd have to go back and check that. But it was great to see Carrie. She's still a great advocate for her sports, helping it to grow, and as always, a great interview. I wonder if I could pull some connections and get her on sometime. That would be a big boost to this podcast. So no promises, but we'll see. Some other points of nostalgia I just want to call out. There's been a few of our local teams that have been doing some promotions and look backs at, different rosters. San Jose Earthquakes just yesterday during their match. It was a 2-2 tie against Dallas FC, but San Jose, they wore their throwback uniforms from the San Jose Clash. Does that ring a bell with anyone? And for a couple of years in MLS, this is in the late 90s, 96 to 99 or so, the San Jose Clash were a team. Did not have a lot of success. I think they switched back to the Earthquakes, more familiar, more history behind that name. But yeah, it was a very 90s logo and kit and everything. It was fun to see the Earthquakes sporting that very 90s retro ensemble. Meanwhile, the Valkyries also did a throwback kind of to shout out to early women's Bay Area basketball teams. And there was 2 teams that they honored, and that was the San Jose Lasers and the San Francisco Pioneers. The San Jose Lasers played in the late 90s. They were owned by Joe Lacob, so nice to see he continues to support women's basketball, now the owner of the Valkyries. But this is part of the ABL, so this is the American Basketball League. ABL ended up folding the year that the WNBA began. The star player on the San Jose Lasers is a very familiar one, Jennifer Azzi. Jennifer Azzi had a great career, winning an Olympic gold in 1996 in Atlanta, had a phenomenal career at Stanford University, and ended up not only one of the founding members of the ABL, but also kicked off the WNBA when she got drafted by the Detroit Shock, throwback to team there. Jennifer then also became the head coach of University of San Francisco in 2010, keeping that position through the 2016 season. Now, the San Francisco Pioneers, this is one I didn't know very much about because this is a team from, the very end of the 70s and early 80s Women's Professional Basketball League. They all played their games out of the San Francisco Civic Auditorium. Just 2 seasons played there. Not much to note, but just an important role just in very early basketball in the Bay Area. So it was nice to see that the Valkyries honoring both of those teams, the Lasers and the Pioneers. Representatives from both teams were present at the game, really showcasing a long legacy of passionate fans and great women's basketball here in the Bay Area. Great that I learned a little bit, and also it was nice to go back and revisit the old San Jose Lasers. And last but not least, flipping through the gossip pages or whatever, a couple happy notes just to mention. Former Warriors David Lee, one of those important pieces from our first championship season. He and his wife, the former tennis player Caroline Wozniacki, they are expecting child number 3, so congratulations to that lovely family. Going to have some super athletic kids. And one other exciting birth to announce, and that was Christian McCaffrey and his wife, Olivia Culpo, welcoming their first child, a daughter born. So congratulations to the McCaffreys. And I'll go ahead and share this. I don't know if it's even a Bay Area story, but fans will kind of appreciate it. I'm the only one that was surprised that Klay Thompson and Megan Thee Stallion are now an item. So they're going to events and seen very publicly now and everything together. So did not have that on my bingo card, but nevertheless, happy to see this great power couple together. I would play some tunes of hers, but it would probably give me a different rating that I'm not prepared to get. So congratulations to that happy couple. All right, this has been a weird week. We're not a lot of sports to watch, but as you could tell, we had a lot of good items. I'll tell you just a couple of things. We've had a couple interviews lately. I'm hoping to keep up with that. I really like those conversations. I love to get more storytelling like that. I've sent out a couple more invitations for additional interviews that I'm hoping to land in the next couple months or so. So working on some things. If you have ideas about conversation that you want to take place, whether it's business focus, a specific sport, or an athlete that you want to talk to. Let me know. I'm happy just to see. I even had, just for what it's worth too, just to show some of the growth of the podcast, is I actually had an athlete reach out to me directly, or maybe it was his agent specifically, but wanting to tell his story. I don't know, it didn't have a Bay Area connection, but nevertheless, I'm thinking, hey, I might just do it just in terms of growing the channel, practice my interview skills a little bit. So we'll see where that goes. But in general, I think this is the direction I definitely want to take this channel. So I think I gave out 4 more formal invitations to different personalities in the coming weeks. So I would love to see that take off. It's a lot of fun. And I thank you all for your support, especially sharing on social media that, you checked out those episodes, give them a shout, tag them in posts, all that. It's helpful not only for me and this channel, but also to give these athletes who, again, maybe they're promoting something, a business or a project that they're working on, just by tagging them or whatever. It's very, very helpful. It's an exciting week ahead. I'll be tuning into the WNBA All-Star Game and one other Bay Area one to watch, especially now since you're all huge race fans because of our conversations and focus on that. July 25th and 26th, it's the Grand Prix at Monterey. That's right, Laguna Seca. Those are the Indy cars coming to town. So if you like NASCAR, thought that was cool, wait till you see Indy cars on that Laguna Seca track. I'm looking forward to that as well. We'll do a wrap right here. But again, thank you as always for this, for always supporting the channel. We're growing. We're making some good progress. We're having some great conversations and content. I always welcome your feedback. Shoot that to me as a comment. I'll respond. And above all else, enjoy Bay Area sports. They do a lot for the community and provide us a ton of great entertainment. I hope you check them out this summer and always. For Silicon Sports Spectator, I am the Joe Machine. We'll see you next time.